Amanda Turner adjusted the collar of her tailored navy blazer as she stepped into the first-class cabin of the aircraft. The plush leather seats and soft golden lighting exuded an air of luxury, a well-deserved treat after years of tireless work at her law firm. She allowed herself a rare moment to relish this. A glass of champagne, a window seat, and 5 uninterrupted hours to unwind. The flight attendant, Charlotte Miller, watched Amanda from the galley. Her sharp hazel eyes narrowed slightly as Amanda settled into seat 2A. Something about Amanda's presence sparked an unease Charlotte couldn't, or wouldn't, articulate. To her, first-class passengers usually fit a particular mold: older, white, and draped in expensive fabrics that whispered legacy wealth. Amanda, with her radiant brown skin and effortless confidence, didn't fit Charlotte's narrow vision of who belonged here. Charlotte pasted on a polite smile as she approached. "Good evening," she said, her voice clipped. "May I see your boarding pass?" Amanda looked up, momentarily puzzled. She had already been greeted at the gate, and her ticket had been scanned. "Of course," she replied calmly, handing over her digital pass. Charlotte inspected it with exaggerated scrutiny, her brows furrowing as if the simple electronic text concealed a mystery. She murmured, handing it back. "Thank you." The interaction left a strange taste in Amanda's mouth, but she dismissed it. She had seen this subtle dance of doubt before. People questioning her place in boardrooms, conferences, and now, apparently, airplanes. As the plane filled and the other first-class passengers settled in, Charlotte's behavior escalated. She bypassed Amanda when offering pre-flight beverages, an omission Amanda noted silently. She lavished extra attention on an older couple across the aisle, even adjusting their blankets with care. By the time the plane began its taxi, Amanda couldn't ignore the simmering hostility. She pressed the call button. Charlotte arrived promptly, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Is there a problem?" Charlotte asked. "Actually, yes," Amanda said, her voice steady. "I noticed I wasn't offered the pre-flight service that others received. Was there an oversight?" Charlotte's smile faltered, and her tone turned defensive. "Oh, we don't always have time to get to everyone." "Interesting," Amanda replied. "Because you seem to have time for every other passenger in this cabin." Charlotte stiffened. "I'll get you a drink now," she said tersely, and turned on her heel. The murmurs of nearby passengers carried in the air. Amanda felt their eyes flicker toward her, some curious, others judgmental. She exhaled slowly, turning toward the window. It was just one interaction, she told herself. Just one small person with a limited worldview. But Charlotte wasn't done. Midway through the flight, as Amanda sipped her champagne and reviewed a case file on her laptop, Charlotte approached again. This time, her voice carried an edge. "Excuse me, Ms.
Turner, was it?"
"Yes," Amanda said, glancing up. "There's been a mix-up," Charlotte announced, her voice loud enough for the other passengers to hear. "I need to confirm your ticket again." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "You've already seen my ticket." "Yes, but I need to double-check," Charlotte said, holding out her hand. Amanda's voice dropped, calm but firm. "And why is that?" Charlotte hesitated, her face a careful mask. "It's just protocol." Amanda tilted her head. "Is it? Because I haven't seen you double-check anyone else's ticket." The tension in the cabin thickened as Charlotte's face turned a shade of crimson. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Ma'am, if you can't provide your ticket, I'll have to ask you to move to another section," Charlotte said, her voice colder now. Amanda felt the heat rise to her cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "I have no intention of moving, Charlotte. My ticket is for this seat, and I intend to stay here." Charlotte crossed her arms, her posture defiant. "If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to involve the captain." The words hung in the air, drawing gasps from nearby passengers. Amanda set her laptop aside and stood, her full height commanding attention. "Please do. Let's clear this up once and for all." Charlotte's composure cracked, a flicker of uncertainty passing through her eyes. She muttered something under her breath and stormed off toward the cockpit. The whispers around Amanda grew louder now. A young woman seated across the aisle leaned over. That was insane, she said in a hushed voice. Amanda gave her a tight smile. Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've seen something like this. When Charlotte returned, it was with the captain in tow, a middle-aged man with a kind face that immediately turned stern as he glanced between Amanda and Charlotte. "Miss Turner," the captain said, his tone conciliatory. "Is there a problem here?" "I believe Charlotte has made it clear she thinks I don't belong in this seat," Amanda said. "She's demanding I prove, yet again, that my ticket is valid." The captain frowned. "That's unnecessary. I apologize for any inconvenience." He turned to Charlotte, his voice quiet but firm. "Please ensure all passengers are treated respectfully." Charlotte's jaw clenched, but she nodded. "Of course." Amanda sat down, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the confrontation settle on her shoulders, but she also knew she hadn't backed down. What Amanda didn't notice, however, was the man in 1C. Ethan Parker had watched the entire scene unfold, his jaw tightening with every word. His impeccably tailored suit and discreet demeanor betrayed nothing of his true identity, the CEO of this very airline. He hadn't planned to intervene, not yet. But as he watched Charlotte retreat to the galley, her face flushed with anger, he knew this incident wasn't over. And when the time came, he would make sure Amanda received the justice she deserved. The cabin was quiet, save for the hum of the engines and the occasional rustle of a newspaper or the clink of a glass. Amanda sat stiffly in her seat, the earlier altercation playing on a loop in her mind. She could feel the glances from other passengers, some sympathetic, others assessing. From the galley, Charlotte's presence loomed like a storm cloud. Her movements were sharp, her interactions with other passengers noticeably warmer than with Amanda. Amanda forced herself to focus on her laptop, opening a brief she needed to review. The words blurred as her thoughts churned. This wasn't just about her seat. It was about the principal, the relentless microaggressions she'd faced her entire life. She wouldn't let this flight be another instance, she brushed off. Charlotte reappeared, this time wheeling the food cart down the aisle. She stopped at each row, her voice cheerful and accommodating, offering personalized suggestions for meals. When she reached Amanda, her tone shifted. "Chicken or pasta?" she asked brusquely. Amanda looked up, her eyebrows raised. "What are the sides?" Charlotte's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's standard. Chicken comes with vegetables. Pasta comes with a salad. Then I'll have the chicken," Amanda said, keeping her voice steady. Charlotte placed the tray on Amanda's table without a word and moved on. The tray was bare compared to the ones the passengers beside her had received. No bread roll, no dessert. Amanda stared at it, the deliberate slight glaringly obvious. The man across the aisle, a middle-aged executive type, leaned over. "Excuse me, miss," he called to Charlotte. "She seems to be missing a few items." Charlotte turned, her smile forced. "We're running low on certain items." "Interesting," he said, gesturing to his own overflowing tray. "Because mine seems fine." Amanda offered him a small smile. "Thank you, but I'll manage." Charlotte didn't miss the exchange, her face tightening as she pushed the cart down the aisle. Amanda sighed and picked up her fork, but her appetite was gone. An hour later, Amanda decided to stretch her legs. She made her way toward the back of the cabin, passing rows of passengers engrossed in movies or books. As she neared the galley, she heard hushed voices, Charlotte's sharp tone cutting through the murmurs of another flight attendant. "She's so entitled," Charlotte said, "acting like she's royalty. I don't know how she even got that seat." Amanda froze. Her hand tightened on the edge of a seat as she listened. "I don't know, Charlotte," the other flight attendant said, her voice hesitant. "She seems polite to me. Maybe you're just—" "I'm not just anything," Charlotte snapped. "People like her always play the victim, always demanding special treatment." Amanda stepped into the galley, her posture straight, her voice calm but firm. "Is there something you'd like to say to me directly, Charlotte?" Charlotte whipped around, her face pale for a split second before the color rushed back in. "Excuse me?" "I couldn't help but overhear," Amanda said. "It seems you have a lot of opinions about me. Care to share them openly?" The younger flight attendant stepped back, her eyes wide as the tension crackled between them. "I was speaking privately," Charlotte said, her voice cold. "In a professional setting, on the clock, in a space where passengers can hear you?" Amanda tilted her head. "I think you've crossed another line." Charlotte squared her shoulders. "I think you're looking for trouble, where there isn't any." Amanda's laugh was quiet but carried weight. "Trouble found me when you decided to single me out the moment I stepped onto this plane. I've tolerated your behavior long enough." "I'm just doing my job," Charlotte snapped. "Really?" Amanda's voice sharpened. "Does your job include serving meals with missing items? Demanding passengers prove their tickets in front of a cabin full of people? Gossiping about customers in the galleys?" Charlotte's jaw worked, but no words came. The younger flight attendant mumbled something about checking on another passenger and quickly retreated. Before Charlotte could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Everything all right here?" Ethan Parker stepped into view, his tone neutral, his eyes flicking between Amanda and Charlotte. His calm demeanor belied the simmering anger beneath. "Perfectly fine," Amanda said, her voice clipped. "Though I'd love to know who oversees staff training for this airline." Ethan's expression didn't change, but Amanda caught the faintest twitch of his jaw. "We take customer experiences seriously," he said. "If there's an issue, I suggest reporting it to the airline after the flight." Amanda gave him a measured look, her instincts telling her there was more to him than met the eye. She nodded curtly and walked past him, returning to her seat. The rest of the flight felt like a marathon. Charlotte avoided Amanda completely, but her lingering presence was enough to sour the atmosphere. Amanda stayed composed, her focus on the legal documents she'd brought to pass the time, though she found herself glancing occasionally toward Ethan in 1C. When the plane began its descent, Charlotte returned to the cabin to prepare for landing. She didn't meet Amanda's eyes as she went through the motions, but Amanda wasn't done. As the plane touched down and passengers began gathering their belongings, Amanda rose from her seat. She waited for Charlotte to pass by and said, loud enough for others to hear, "You should consider a career change if serving people equally is such a challenge." Charlotte froze, her face paling as passengers nearby paused in their movements. Ethan, who had already risen and retrieved his carry-on, turned his gaze to Charlotte as well. He gave Amanda a small, approving nod before stepping into the aisle. "Miss Turner," he said, his voice warm but authoritative. "A word, if you don't mind." Amanda's brow furrowed, but she nodded. She followed Ethan toward the front of the plane, curiosity flickering beneath her frustration. Charlotte, left standing in the aisle, felt her control over the situation slipping completely. And deep down, she feared the fallout she had unwittingly set in motion. Ethan opened the door to the first-class lounge at the gate and motioned Amanda inside.
"Please," he said.
Amanda stepped in, folding her arms as she faced him. "What is this about?" Ethan closed the door, his demeanor shifting from polite to commanding. "First, let me apologize for what you endured on this flight. It was unacceptable." Amanda blinked, momentarily thrown off balance by the directness of his statement. "And second," Ethan continued, "I need you to know that this isn't over. Charlotte will face the consequences of her actions." "Who exactly are you?" Amanda asked, suspicion and curiosity mingling in her voice. Ethan hesitated, but only briefly. "I'm Ethan Parker, CEO of Skylux Airlines." Amanda stared at him, processing the revelation. She had expected many things, but not this. "And you sat there," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "watching all of it happen?" Ethan met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "I had my reasons. But I promise you, Miss Turner, justice will be served." Amanda crossed her arms, her skepticism evident. "We'll see about that." With that, she turned and left the lounge, her mind racing with questions and the faintest hope that perhaps, this time, someone in power might actually follow through. The following morning, Amanda sat in the spacious living room of her Los Angeles hotel suite, her phone buzzing incessantly. News of the incident on the Skylux flight had spread like wildfire. Someone had recorded part of the exchange and posted it online. Comments flooded social media, praising Amanda's composure while calling out the blatant discrimination. Others debated the validity of the story, questioning what hadn't been shown on camera. Amanda sipped her coffee, scrolling through her emails. Her legal team had already reached out, offering to pursue action against the airline if she wanted. But Amanda wasn't sure what she wanted yet. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Ethan Parker. Ethan Parker, I would like to meet with you to discuss yesterday's events. My office will accommodate your schedule. Amanda stared at the message, debating whether to respond. She didn't trust Ethan yet. His silence during the flight still rankled, and his polite apology after landing had felt too rehearsed. Yet, there was something about his approach that intrigued her, a quiet intensity that suggested he wasn't just paying lip service. After a moment, she typed a curt reply. Amanda Turner, 2 p.m. works. Send the address. Ethan's office was located in a sleek, high-rise building in downtown Los Angeles. Amanda arrived promptly, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors as she was escorted to his corner suite. The space was minimalistic yet warm, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a sweeping view of the city. Ethan stood as she entered, his tailored suit impeccable, but his expression was guarded. Miss Turner, he said, extending a hand. Thank you for coming. Amanda shook his hand, her grip firm. Let's get to the point, Mr. Parker. Why am I here? Ethan gestured to a chair, and Amanda sat, crossing her legs as she studied him. He leaned forward, his forearms resting on the desk. Yesterday's incident was unacceptable, he began. Charlotte's behavior doesn't reflect the values of this airline, or at least it shouldn't. Shouldn't? Amanda raised an eyebrow. Ethan exhaled. I won't pretend Skylux is perfect. Like many corporations, we've had issues with bias, explicit and implicit. But this isn't about defending the company. This is about accountability. Amanda tilted her head, her skepticism evident. And where does accountability begin? Because you sat there and said nothing while it happened. Ethan's jaw tightened. You're right. I should have intervened sooner. But I needed to see how far it would go. Amanda's eyes narrowed. And why would you need that? Ethan hesitated, his gaze steady. Charlotte has a history. Complaints were filed against her in the past, but they were dismissed without proper investigation. I wanted irrefutable proof this time. Amanda leaned back in her chair, processing his words. So, I was your test case? A pawn to prove a point. No, Ethan said quickly, his voice firm. That's not what I meant. But the way you handled yourself, your composure under pressure, it brought clarity to something I couldn't ignore any longer. Amanda let his words hang in the air for a moment. So, what now? Ethan straightened, his tone resolute. Charlotte has been placed on immediate leave, pending an investigation. Beyond that, I'm implementing a top-down review of our training protocols and reporting mechanisms. Amanda arched an eyebrow. And I'm supposed to believe this isn't just damage control? It's more than that, Ethan said, leaning forward. I want you to help us. Your expertise, your insight, you could make a real difference in shaping a better system. Amanda blinked, caught off guard. You're asking me to consult for your airline? Yes, Ethan said simply. You're uniquely qualified. You've lived these experiences, and you've built a career advocating for fairness. Who better to guide this process? Amanda studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity. She found none. I'll think about it, she said finally. Ethan nodded.
Take your time.
I'll support whatever decision you make. As Amanda left the building, she replayed the conversation in her mind. She wasn't sure whether to trust Ethan's motives, but one thing was clear. This incident was bigger than her. Meanwhile, in a small conference room at Skylux headquarters, Charlotte Miller sat across from a panel of HR representatives. Her palms were sweaty as she clutched a folder of documents she had hastily prepared. This is absurd, she said, her voice defensive. I've been with this company for over 15 years. One misunderstanding, and I'm being dragged in here like a criminal? The lead HR representative, a stern woman named Linda, adjusted her glasses. Ms. Miller, this is not just about yesterday. We've reviewed prior complaints from passengers and staff about your conduct. Charlotte's face flushed. Complaints? From whom? This is a smear campaign. Ms. Miller, Linda said firmly, Your actions on Flight 347 were witnessed by multiple passengers and documented on video. We have no choice but to take this seriously." Charlotte's hands trembled as she opened her folder. "I was doing my job. That woman, Ms. Turner," Linda interjected, "was a first-class passenger entitled to the same respect as anyone else in that cabin. Your behavior was unprofessional and discriminatory." Charlotte clenched her jaw, but she knew she was cornered. Later that evening, Amanda received an unexpected call from an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Amanda Turner," she said, her tone cautious. "It's Ethan," came the familiar voice. "I thought you'd like to know. Charlotte resigned this afternoon." Amanda felt a mix of relief and frustration. Resigned? That's convenient. She understood her position was untenable, Ethan said. "But I assure you, this doesn't absolve her of accountability. We're still proceeding with our review of her past behavior." Amanda sighed. "Good. But this isn't just about one person, Ethan. It's about a system that allows people like her to thrive." "I know," Ethan said quietly. "And with your help, we can start changing that." Amanda remained silent, her mind racing. She had spent her career fighting for justice in courtrooms, but maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to make a difference on a larger scale. "I'll think about it," she said again. "And if you need anything," Ethan added, "I'm just a call away." As the call ended, Amanda stood by the window of her hotel suite, looking out at the glittering Los Angeles skyline. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since the flight, she felt a spark of hope. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The viral video of Amanda's confrontation with Charlotte had ignited widespread discussions about systemic discrimination in the airline industry and beyond. News outlets clamored for interviews, advocacy groups reached out, and Amanda found herself at the center of a cultural reckoning she hadn't sought but couldn't ignore. Despite the media frenzy, Amanda maintained her composure. She agreed to a few interviews, carefully framing the narrative. This wasn't just about her, but about addressing the broader issues that allowed such behavior to persist. She deliberately avoided sensationalism, her legal training guiding her to stick to facts and solutions. Meanwhile, Skylux Airlines was in full crisis mode. Ethan Parker had launched a company-wide initiative to address employee training, hiring independent consultants to conduct bias awareness workshops. Internally, some employees welcomed the changes, while others, like Charlotte's close friends, grumbled about political correctness invading the workplace. Ethan's leadership team urged him to stay out of the spotlight, fearing that his connection to Amanda could lead to accusations of favoritism. But Ethan wasn't one to shy away from responsibility. He insisted on transparency, delivering a public statement that acknowledged the company's failures and pledged to do better. One afternoon, Amanda sat in her office back in New York, reviewing a memo about a pro bono case she'd taken on when her assistant buzzed in. "Ms. Turner, Ethan Parker is on line 1. Amanda hesitated before picking up. "Ethan," she said, her tone neutral. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to update you personally," he said. "The internal review is complete. We've identified several gaps in our processes, and corrective measures are being implemented. But there's something else I need to discuss with you." Amanda leaned back in her chair, sensing the weight in his voice. "Go on." "Charlotte," he began, pausing briefly, "is threatening legal action. She claims wrongful termination and discrimination." Amanda's brow furrowed. "Let me guess. She's framing herself as the victim?" "Exactly," Ethan confirmed. "Her legal team is arguing that she was unfairly targeted due to the media attention around her incident." Amanda couldn't help but laugh, though it carried no humor. "The irony is astounding." "I thought you should know," Ethan said. "We're prepared to fight this, but I'd like your perspective. You understand this better than anyone." Amanda tapped her pen against her desk. "You need to make it clear that this isn't about one event. This is about a pattern of behavior. Focus on the complaints against her, the investigations that were swept under the rug. Her actions on that flight were just the tipping point." Ethan listened intently. "Would you consider advising our legal team?" Amanda hesitated. "I'm not sure. I have my own cases to manage, and this feels personal." "I understand," Ethan said, his tone genuine. "But think about it. Your insight could be invaluable. The next day, Amanda received a package from Skylux Airlines, a thick binder labeled Internal Investigations. Miller, Charlotte. Curiosity got the better of her, and she spent hours poring over the documents. The reports painted a damning picture. Complaints ranged from dismissive behavior toward minority passengers to outright hostility toward coworkers. Several incidents had been logged but never escalated, buried under vague justifications like miscommunications or lack of evidence. Amanda's chest tightened as she read. This wasn't negligence, it was willful ignorance. Charlotte's behavior had been enabled by a culture that prioritized appearances over accountability. She picked up her phone and called Ethan. "I'll help," she said without preamble. "But under one condition, I want full access to your policies, procedures, and training programs. If I'm going to do this, I need to know what I'm working with." "Done," Ethan said, relief evident in his voice. A week later, Amanda flew to Los Angeles to meet with Ethan's legal and HR teams. Walking into the conference room, she was struck by the mix of skepticism and anticipation on their faces. She introduced herself succinctly, then dove into the binder of findings she'd annotated. "Let's start with the pattern of dismissal," she said, flipping to a flagged section. "These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a systemic failure to address misconduct. That's what Charlotte's team will try to downplay, and that's what we need to emphasize." The team listened intently as Amanda laid out her strategy, her sharp mind and clear arguments earning respect even from the most doubtful attendees. Ethan, seated at the head of the table, watched her with a mix of admiration and gratitude. He knew bringing Amanda on board had been the right decision. Meanwhile, Charlotte had taken to social media to drum up support for her narrative. In carefully crafted posts, she painted herself as a scapegoat, targeted for doing her job under difficult circumstances. Her words resonated with some, sparking heated debates online. Amanda refused to engage directly, but she monitored the discourse closely. She noticed a troubling trend. Many of Charlotte's defenders didn't just justify her actions, they amplified the same biases that had fueled them. "It's not just about her," Amanda said during a meeting with Ethan. "This is a fight against a mindset, not just one person." Ethan nodded. "And it's a fight worth having." The day of Charlotte's mediation hearing arrived. Amanda, seated beside Skylux's lead attorney, exuded calm confidence as Charlotte and her legal team entered the room. Charlotte's lawyer opened with a polished statement, framing her as a model employee unfairly vilified due to a single misunderstanding magnified by public scrutiny. When it was Amanda's turn to speak, she began by presenting a series of passenger complaints against Charlotte. "These aren't misunderstandings," Amanda said firmly. "They're part of a documented pattern. And for too long, this company failed to act." Charlotte squirmed to her seat as Amanda outlined each incident, her tone professional but piercing. By the time Amanda finished, even Charlotte's lawyer looked uneasy. Ethan leaned over to Amanda as the mediator called for a recess. "That was brilliant," he murmured. Amanda simply nodded, her focus unbroken. By the end of the day, the mediation concluded with Charlotte withdrawing her claim in exchange for a settlement that included a non-disclosure agreement. It wasn't the ideal outcome, but it ensured she couldn't return to Skylux or perpetuate her behavior elsewhere. Ethan turned to Amanda as they exited the building. "This isn't the end, is it?" "Not even close," Amanda replied. "But it's a start." Ethan offered her a small smile. "With you on our side, I feel like we might actually make progress." Amanda met his gaze, her own softening slightly. "Let's hope so." As she walked away, Amanda felt a mix of exhaustion and resolve. The fight was far from over, but she was more determined than ever to see it through. Months later, Amanda sat on the balcony of her New York apartment, the skyline stretching out before her. The evening air was cool, and the soft hum of the city below served as a backdrop to her thoughts. The journey since the flight had been tumultuous, but transformative. Skylux Airlines had undergone significant changes. Ethan had followed through on his promises, overhauling the company's policies with Amanda's guidance. Together, they had implemented mandatory bias training, revamped the complaint reporting system, and